Hi, welcome to Me and My Bass. I got a question a couple of times about how much basses do you own and how much basses did you sell. Well, how much I own, I leave that in the middle. Is that an English expression or not? I'm not too sure, but I won't tell you. And how much did you sell or swap or whatever? Well, in the last 20 years, it's about last 40 years, it's been 48 basses. So I sold or traded 48 basses. And I like to run through a couple of them and or show you all of them and tell you with some of them why I didn't like that or those basses. So let's start with my second bought bass, the Washburn Force ABT-10 B10. I sold that bass. I bought it. It was my second bass, and then I played on it for 1-2 years or something. And then somehow I didn't know anything about setting up basses, truss rods. The only thing I knew was how to change strings, and that was it. So when the neck started to become a sort of a banana, I went to a friend and he tried to straighten it out, and he did manage to get it playable again. But I thought, well, maybe I should get rid of this bass. So I traded that bass for a Riverhead bass. Then I also bought a BC Rich Warlock bass, which is of course a great looking metal bass. But at some point I stopped playing. It was in the first period of my musical career where I did some kind of parody band, which was of course metal like, but then that stopped and I started playing with a more blues rock orientated band, and that bass fell completely out of place. It was out of place. I fell out of tone. That's also a Dutch thing, I think. Well, okay. So I traded that together with the Washburn for a Riverhead bass. Then I bought a bass from a friend of mine, a Kazuka Jazz bass. But after a while, I also gave that bass back because I didn't use it anymore. So that was the Kazuka Jazz. Then the Riverhead Dola, which I traded the Washburn and BC Rich for that bass. I also traded that in because I was more interested in keyboards at that point. I also had bought a Samick 5-string bass, which I also sold to Leah, the girlfriend from Mark, who also does the Grumpy Old Man with me. And I sold later on a Fender Precision bass, which I also had bought around 1990, I think. I also had a Washburn Force fretless bass, Force 8 fretless bass, which was a backup for the other fretless bass. But I'm not too sure. I also traded that one in. Then came the period where I played keyboards, didn't do anything with basses, and when I got back into the bass stuff, I bought a couple other basses, but I also traded and sold a few. So I had that Westone Quantum bass, which was very nice, but it had some sharp edges on, and so I traded that one in to, or I sold that one to get a Steinberger Synapse bass to fund that a bit. Also had a H&S double neck headless fretless bass, which came out of China. I bought it. I thought it was a German company, but all the stuff came direct from China. it wasn't that great. Friends of mine tried to work on that bass, had put a lot of oil in it, but it didn't work out. It wasn't that great. So I sold that one. I also had a Hohner B2A bass, which is of course nothing more than a Steinberger XT bass. It's almost the same, and it didn't do it for me. Also an OLP MM3 5-string bass. I also had that, but I was great to try out a 5-string bass again, and I sold that one. I also sold a Hondo Alien headless bass, which was of course a copy of the Kramer Duke bass. But I at some point I thought, well, get all these headless stuff out. I want to buy a decent normal headed bass. So there it went. Did I regret some of these basses? Yes, I did regret selling the Washburn, and I did regret selling the Riverhead, by the way, Riverhead Dola, but I bought those back later on. Then I bought a H&S again, the German company, but maybe that was before I got the double neck. That was a Steinberger-like bass, but then made fretless. Great. The bridges on those basses are all horrible. Overwater, it's called, I believe. Well, it's horrible quality. I was glad to sell that one, and also bought and sold a Yamaha BB300, which was made fretless by a previous owner. Great bass. Maybe that bass. No, not really. No regrets, but it was a great bass. The Riverhead Unicorn, that one I regretted because that was it's still a pretty rare bass, and it sounded and played great, but I was in that state of get rid of a lot of stuff. Also a Squier Affinity precision bass, which was made in China. Great bass. I had it for, I guess, 10 minutes or so, and I hit it on this desk and it had a dent in it. So that was not as great, but the bass was okay. Also, I sold and bought a couple of other Squiers, the standard P-bass special, Sunburst, which was a good bass, but at some point I just had to move on. And also a Squier standard P-bass special again in red, and that was a backup for my other Fender bass, the Nate Mandel. The Squier Contemporary bass, I also had that for a short time. I think about 5-6 months or so. Was a great bass, but it was incredibly heavy, so I could swap that for a vintage modified Precision. I thought that was more up my alley. Then I bought and sold a red sub fan fret bass to try out. On this channel there is a video of that bass, by the way, the red sub, which isn't a bad bass for the price, because it's a budget bass. Of course, it's made by music Gear for Music, yeah, that British firm. But I swapped that for a Squier HMV. Maybe I also got rid of that one, but that comes next, I think. The Flea Touring bass was a short scale bass. Great, but I didn't play it, so moved on. The Steinberger L2, I had 2 of these basses, and I managed to bought it for a lot of money, but I even got more from it when I sold it. So that funded with some other basses. And I will end this episode with the Status S5000. Maybe that was, I regret selling or swapping that bass, because it was a complete non-wood Status. The body was also made of some synthetic material. It had a great, of course, Status sound, but the problem with me and Status basses is the fact that it slips off my knees. I can't get used to that. I swapped that for another Status bass, Status Energy, and I had the same problem with it as well. It didn't work out. So that were the 24 basses I traded or sold, and yes, there were a few which in hindsight maybe I should have kept, but yeah, such is life, and we move on. So if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Until next time, see you, bye bye.